trying to get a sense of what your role was, and maybe were there kind of I guess the pivotal decisions, if you maybe can that you remember, like being in that room or in that like circle, whatever, in terms of like how certain decisions maybe that were pivotal to what then transpired. Yeah, just maybe things that you recall in terms of like just also helpful for young folks to think about in terms of those movements.
You have to look at the backdrop or what was going on overall at the time the organizing was taking place around the hotel. So the first eviction notice comes down in 68 or 69, and a lot of students from UC Berkeley, San Francisco State organized down here. But during the mid-60s, early 70s, mid-70s, we're talking about the Vietnam War, anti-Vietnam War, where we're talking about coming off the civil rights movement, entering the women's movement, entering the gay liberation movement, entering the movements for sovereignty in Central America and South America, the defense of Cuba. So this is a politically charged period, 10-year period, where people are organizing all over the place. This is also the time where ethnic studies on the college campuses gets introduced.
It's okay, I think this is my water bottle. I think I'm trying to...
Sorry.
It's okay. I mean, it's cats. So you said that they were organizing in the college campuses all over? Like,
for the implementation of ethnic studies. This is where you had the 69 to 70 strikes at San Francisco State for that. So everything is in motion. Everything's in motion. And people are becoming very politically conscious about what is this thing called profits before people. Next step. What is this thing called working class and the capitalist class? Next step. What is this understanding of this worldwide system of capitalism called imperialism, and how does that affect the Philippines? This is all in one 10 to 15 year span time that many of my friends and myself grew up with, in the turmoil, in the heat of the struggle, and as some would say, in the belly of the beast. The organizing around the hotel is a very complex one, because when it initially starts off with the tenants themselves, and then it expands to the storefront, so that we're talking about Asian Community Center, Chinese Progressive Association, Everybody's Bookstore, Kearny Street Workshop, all that. Mabuhay Restaurant, and then leading this along with the tenants, along with the students, is the United Filipino Association, UFA. So it starts moving in that direction. Where it becomes very difficult is when the storefront organizations, not so much with Kearny Street Workshop, but the other left organizations that were represented on the storefront, started to interact with the eviction. I mean, they had to, because if we got evicted, they got evicted. But also then the two organizations, the Asian Community Center and the Chinese Progressive Association. They were front organizations for the leftists. So Chinese Progressive Association was dominated by Iwakyun, or Righteous Harmonious Fist, IWK. Asian Community Center was dominated by the Revolutionary Union, the RU. Both of these organizations they considered themselves the vanguard. And so you have two organizations that are not just supporting, the anti-eviction struggle, but also in battle with one another over dominance in this struggle as well as the struggle for Chinatown. And then you have us, the tenants, that were right in the middle. And so finally, it comes a point in time where Emile de Guzman and he was going to UC Berkeley at the time, he comes down here and gets to know the tenants, and senses there's something wrong. The tenants have to be the leadership, not you guys. 1974-75, the Union of Democratic Filipinos is formed. Katipunan ng mga Demokratikong Pilipino. KDP. Emile joins, I join, and Dr. Stella Habal. And we start working directly with the tenants, strengthening them, listening to them, arguing with them, moving and organizing on so many different levels, it would blow your mind. And at that time, we were operating with the theoretical construct of the united front of left and progressives has to lead the Popular Front, which did happen. And the tenants straddled between the United Front and the Popular Front. The United Front had the left organizations on the block and every other left organization in San Francisco and beyond. So that was the United Front. The Popular Front was the local bourgeoisie. It's the left, the right, and the middle. You have to have that in order to be able to organize a successful movement. You can't write off the local bourgeoisie that are progressive to a point. You have to keep them in that front. So we're working with them. They have the ties that are necessary, the bureaucracy within the city to be able to move in that direction. Holding that in check are the middle and the left forces of the Popular Front. Unfortunately, the left of Storefront did not grasp that. They did not grasp what is the difference between an objective and a goal. How do objectives move forward the goal? They saw everything short of not having an eviction. You couldn't negotiate, because if you negotiated with the city, you were a sellout. You're buying time. You're buying time to widen this struggle, to deepen people's understanding, to sit there and talk with other tenants about what are your concerns. What are your concerns? Let's talk about that. And if you didn't know what their other concerns were, then why the fuck were you in this struggle?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
were they trying to push for something that was maybe not in the interest of maybe the tenants or something?
well,
Or like
in
more
my
militancy kind of
opinion,
type
yes.
stuff?
In my opinion,
Yeah.
yes. I can't speak
Yeah.
for anybody else. Well, I could speak for Estella and Emile. Yes,
Yeah.
we all three of us felt that it's like, why shouldn't you negotiate with the city? You know, because one particular instance, Mayor Moscone at the time, and you know, and he was a progressive mayor, along with Harvey Milk.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they got shot, they were killed, they were assassinated later on, but they had proposed that the city buy the hotel under eminent domain and then sell it back to the tenants, and over time the tenancy would pay that. The other, well, I'll call them the ultra left. The ultra left groups, very dogmatic. You should not negotiate with the city. They're the bourgeoisie. Oh, it's as if we don't know that. And anything short of them giving us the hotel is reformist and counter-revolutionary. What's your plan? Then what's your plan? It's to be here every day, run a hotel, you know. We're talking about how do you sustain a movement? How do you sustain a movement?
Yeah, that's a great question.
You know, how do you sustain the movement? First, you got to sustain the leadership of that movement, which are the tenants. Then you got to sustain the broader movement. How do you do that? Through publicity, propaganda, meeting with people, blah, 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 blah. It's not just about having these massive demonstrations. They really had no other plan. And they called what they called the plan that Moscone put forward, the buyback plan, as an eviction plan. How could the tenants afford to pay the city back? How we have always been through our rent. Did you expect the tenants to be given the hotel and not pay any rent? I mean, come on, you know, you live in a capitalist society, there are capitalist relations all over the place, and you're saying they need to give the hotel to the tenants and we're not going to pay any rent. That's unheard of, and that's not going to happen. Not in this time, not on this chipper day, or ever. You know, and especially this area, per square block now, 2,000.
It's like prime real estate, huh?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. If you go up to the roof of this hotel, this building, you could see the view is kick-ass, and anybody in their right mind would have loved to develop condominium because it's so, and you're between two communities, Chinatown and North Beach. But you know, organizing a mass movement, organizing the tenants, it took a drain. It drained a lot of people, but you know, when you looked at my fellow comadres and compadres that lived in this hotel, every day they were ready, and these people were 60, 70, 80 years old, and I got my enthusiasm. I got my inspiration. When I felt like I just wanted to fall down and die, they said, "Would you please get up?" You know, and they shamed you. They shamed you. You know, it was like,
you're really gonna do that.
Right, you know.
Yeah, no, that's really funny you said that. But I was curious also, like, did you see at that time? Did you see yourself having a very specific role in terms of like what you're offering for the collective, and because I know you were saying it sounded like there's like a convergence of these different organizations, and they're kind of figuring out these things. I was curious more for your part in that, and did you, like, I know you said that you connected with Emil and another to create the org, but yeah, just for yourself, like, what was the kind of, at least at that time, did you see your kind of maybe role was, and how did you sort of like move around in terms of like, being able to assume that position?
Right. In terms of myself, it was to stop this eviction.
Yeah.
And I will often have these dreams about, if we would stop this eviction, then I could renovate my room, and I would, we all had those kind of dreams. Because I wasn't intending to move out. I was intending to live at the hotel. But it was to stop the eviction, and the only way you could have done that was to create this mass movement by strengthening the role of the tenants, the International Hotel Tenants Association. And we were the ones that met with the city, met with Moscone, that met with the housing authority, blah, 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 and met with other people in the communities, that were also fighting against redevelopment.
It's like a lot of that, huh? It's just like that's kind of really what it comes down to. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, like, what about now? I'm sure. I don't know how. If you're still, involved with other stuff, but I'm curious with like, the whole. Yeah, like thinking about redevelopment, like just in the present time, and in terms of like having gone through that and seeing maybe the shifts of like that and then where we are now, but also these kind of new things being implemented. And then like even like grants passed where like it's even like criminal to be houseless, or
oh wow,
it's like already like a felony. Like, so I guess I'm just curious in terms of yeah, any thoughts between the trajectory of where you are in terms of kind of that, and sort of like seeing what then ended up, in terms of kind of maybe, yeah, I guess I'm just curious of like your perspectives on the present, because I feel like you having lived like through that in that very specific point in time, and being very close to the movement in that way, just, and being aware of where we are maybe now in terms of like housing, I think even development or really gentrification. Yeah, just kind of curious too if any things that you're, kind of seen, maybe reflected on.
I mean,
class, especially in the class kind of thing, because you brought that up.
Yeah. Well, in terms of the housing struggle in San Francisco, it's never going to be the same. The International Hotel was the biggest housing struggle in the nation. And it got its just dues in terms of publicity. The night of the eviction, Walter Cronkite aired that. And that went from the East Coast to the West Coast. So this was the biggest housing struggle. This set the precedent for rent control, all that. And stopping or slowing down the city from developing more and more and more and more condominiums and unaffordable housing. But, the movement, the progressive movement goes through its ebbs and flows. And right now, I would say we're in an ebb. Politically, I think that young people are gravitating towards trying to understand what's this thing going on in Gaza and the West Bank. What's the historical backdrop to that? Who are the players? Who's playing with one another and who ain't? the situation in the Philippines has deteriorated to the point where the New People's Army is now considered just a bandit organization. The Communist Party that was under Jose Maria Sison or Joma lost its fervor. They're still around, but they lost their mass base when they openly declared that the snap elections, people shouldn't join it. They lost a lot of people. And so who rises again as the progressive bourgeoisie in the Philippines, you know, the Cory Aquinos, da-da-da-da-da-da, who you can work with, but the left in the Philippines pretty much is decimated. And the left here in the United States, the Communist Party, the CPUSA, goes through a very tumultuous time. All the other major left organizations, same thing. So you have this void or this area that people are coming up and they don't know who to turn to, where to turn to, how to learn, what to learn, and where to go. They don't have the tools and they don't have the consciousness to be able to sustain a movement. And so a lot of people my age, what we call the baby boomers, we're placed in a position to offer our history, offer our analysis, so that the continuity between me, you, and the younger ones is not broken. That's what I see my role as now, is to be able to transfer all that knowledge, all that information, all that history to the people who come after me. So when it's your turn, you need to do the same to the people after you. And it's not just about proclaiming yourself as being a Filipino American. It's also proclaiming and claiming the fact that you're an American Filipino. You cannot let anybody tell you that you are not American, because they will try. That's part of the whole racist notion in the United States. It's only white people that are American. That's not true. So whether you were born here or naturalized here, America's your home, and you need to defend your right as an American to be living here in the United States. So it's that kind of balancing act that you have to do.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you sharing that